In the beginning of the fifth parak of brachos, in Undim discusses how you stand in tefillah. It says it's various things you don't do it with, jokingly, etc., but you do it with halacha psuka. After learning a clear halacha, then you daven. So that you have a miyusha v'das. The Gemara asks what type of halacha psuka. So it gives 3 examples there. Second example is that you trick for meiser, and you bring the meiser into the house while it's still in its chaff, and because you do that, therefore it's potter from meiser, and you can feed your behemoths. The way the meiser works, the way the grain works, is the grain is the ikr of the wheat or the shiburas, as the kernel on the inside and has the chaff on the outside that protects it from the wind and rain. And then when the wind and rain, after it's fully grown, then you remove the chaff and you have the grain that's left. If you don't have the chaff, so then the grain will just rot because of the wind and the rain. So kedusha will only chal on the ikr. Kedusha will only take part of the main, the panimi, the inside, the main point. And it's not going to fall on the chitzoni. It's not going to fall on the less important point, that it's like, again, the flavor of the apple is so that you get the nutritions of the apple. What we do today is take all the flavor of the apple and put it on a bowl of sugar and call it an apple candy. So that's all chitzoni. So there the kedusha will never chal on that, on the panimi. So the whole time that the chaff is with the wheat, so then the kedusha will never chal, therefore you can't take meiser. So only once. It's the lashon the Gemara is Mariach Hatzakri, is when you smooth over the pile, is because you have the pile now ready for human consumption. You have the pile ready for you've removed all the externalities, and you're only left with the ikr. So it says there that you marim, you trick, so that you feed your behemoth. So again, an important point is that, again, this is also a halacha before tefillah. And that all your nefesh elokis is delighted to be davening all day. Your nefesh behemoth wants to do other things, wants to go back to bed or play on the internet or whatever it's doing. It doesn't really want to daven. You have to trick your nefesh behemoth with the chitzoni. So that don't just say I'm so from and we're going to do meiser and everything because this is let's just go straight to the ikr. Say no, you gotta keep the klipa, you gotta keep the chaff in order to excite the nefesh behemoth, so that you feed your nefesh behemoth through without taking meiser. That you feed the nefesh behemoth with things that are not kodosh. That's not the panimi. You feed it with the chitzoni, because animals eat the straw, and humans don't eat. And there's no meiser on tevin. There's no meiser on straw. But the whole goal there is that if your nefesh behemoth doesn't want to go daven, so you trick it, and then it will want to go daven. So therefore, when you daven, everyone's there. But the kind of goal of the klipa is that you eventually train your behemoth that doesn't need to be tricked, and you can go straight to that nefesh behemoth actually enjoys the panimi and the ikr. Now, so therefore the whole goal of the klipa is just to be there until it doesn't have to be there anymore. And while you need it, when you're starting, you develop so that you don't actually need it in the end. And if you stay with it when you don't need it, so then you're going to have problems. This again we spoke before about the chitzoni of Torah, being what can Torah do for you. So that's all to get your nefesh behemoth excited. But the real growth is when he's not interested what he can get out of it. He wants to know what is the Torah saying. Esav comes to Yitzchak Rashi at the beginning told us, he says Esav asks Yitzchak, Ech meiser es teven v'es melach. How do we meiser salt? How do we meiser straw and salt? And we spoke before with a whole different pshat on this Rashi. But what Be'ikr was Esav's question, how do we meiser teven, how do we meiser straw, is that Esav wanted to make the klipa the kedusha. That he wanted to make the outside, he wanted to make the chitzoni the ikr. That's the main point, and that's what the Torah is all about. That's what the world's all about. It's that it's not the panimi and the kedusha. Let's make the chitzoni kodesh, so that we won't celebrate the nutritional value of apple. We'll celebrate the apple candy. We're not going to celebrate the panimi of the Torah, of what the Torah is saying. We're going to celebrate the make the main thing what the Torah does for me. So Yaakov didn't have those issues. Yaakov was in the panim, but Esav was stuck on the chitzoni. So rather than staying in the battle, he wanted to make that the ikr, make the chitzoni the ikr. So how do we meiser the teven? So the stam of the teven, as agricultural produce, is palter from meiser. But if we make it the ikr, we make the chitzoni the ikr. So therefore, you have to start taking meiser on the klipa. And he also asked about the salt. So salt, the problems that people have, or tests that people have in their lives. And one way is to deny them, which causes repression and causes issues. And the other is to say, the other extreme is to say that they're good, that this is the way it is. There was a football player in the MLS. He was the first player to be openly gay in the MLS. And he said his only regret was that he didn't come out earlier. Now, before you come out, you're doing everything in the shadows. You're not going to do things in public. You're not going to in front of other people, because somewhere you're saying that what I'm doing is wrong. Once you come out, then what you're saying is that what I'm doing is right, and if you don't like what I'm doing, so you have the problem. So the saltiness are the problems that people have, and you can't make the salt your main meal. Your salt is in the meal. Your salt gives the flavor to the food, but you don't just eat a meal of salt. So by making salt the ikr, so then you say that this salt is the main meal. So again, in Marshall, however I feel defines who I am. So if I have gay tendency, therefore I am gay. If I feel like raping women, therefore I'm a rapist. That's what Esav, I don't know if Esav was gay, but he was a rapist and a murderer. So however I feel, then let that define me. So Esav is saying, how do I meister salt? How do I make the salt? And how do I make the kedusha out of the problems in life, out of my trials and tribulations, out of my tests? How do I make that holy? Not the test of being holy, but that the actual feelings, the actual salt itself. How do I make that salt not a way to season the food and therefore make the food better, but actually just feast on the salt, so that whatever taivas I'm having, then they will just ultimately define me, and that, but not that define me, but define me, and therefore I'm holy. That I am the right one, and you have a problem if I don't. We see this in the lefty liberal American society today, where Ben Shapiro was saying that transgender is a mental issue, and having an operation etc., doesn't actually help anything. They still have the mental issues, even if they have gone in through all this. But somebody who has these issues, this is the salt, the flavoring of their life in order to bring out more in the person, bring out more flavors in the person's life. And by making the salt the ikr, by taking meiser on the salt, so therefore you say, well, since this is how I feel, therefore this is what I'm going to do, and if anyone doesn't like it, then you have the problem. So by making salt the ikr, but again, you're not actually helping anything. That the person goes through and is just eating salt as their main meal, and they're not happy. They're still not happy. They convinced everybody to have salt as the main meal, but still nobody's happy because they don't like the taste of salt. So that the liberal society has pushed itself into all these issues by thinking that no, this is the way again, let's make the klipa the ikr, let's make the salt the ikr, and anyone who disagrees with me, then you have a big problem. But it doesn't solve anything, because it's not really what they're looking for. And again, having as he said that his grandfather was schizophrenic, and they institutionalized him and gave him medicine that helped him. He says it wouldn't have helped him if they told him that, not only is the wall talking to you, but the spoon's also talking to you. And anyone who doesn't think that is they're the crazy ones. Having that type of attitude doesn't help the person who's sick. Doesn't help the person who's looking, who's searching for something to help them. So the society, because they've decided to meiser as a tevin and meiser as a malach, they're causing all these problems, and society is a complete mess, based on a lot of the liberal policies that have been pushed by the left, and now that they see themselves in trouble, then they have to blame other people. For example, the Me Too movement basically started once you move relations from a intimate level of intimacy between a married man and a married woman to that relations is just a trade, and that if I want to sell my body to improve my career, therefore if you have a problem with that and you think I'm slutty, so you're the problem person. Once you introduce that into society and you completely cheapen everything, so then why would these things not happen? We spoke before about this 3 shitas on shaking a woman's hand. The Stipler says it's a Yerek Val Yavor, die rather than shake a woman's hand. Rav Moshe Feinstein says it's an Issa D'Oraisa, and then he says later that it's mutter lechatchila, quoting somebody else. Now, he basically says in his last shuva that since it used to be that touching women was an act of chiba, that you have no, again, women didn't even vote 100 years ago. They were not in society. So for you hanging out with a woman, there's only one kind of reason. You walk into the kitchen and start shaking some dude's wife, her hand, like, that's kind of, what are you doing? But today it's kind of normal, and all this has been pushed by the feminist movement, etc., etc. So now that they're everywhere in their sexuality, etc., 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 so now that's created a position where women are actually less secure than they were 100 years ago in their in these areas of aggressive sexuality towards them. So their whole plan didn't work. So now they're blaming other people. So this is really the Toitzah of Esav, of one. This is why these things are happening, because Esav wants to Meiser as a Tevin as a Malach. And the society out there, mainly I guess on the west coast, but across the whole of the Western world, that's the society that's created from Esav.